Welcome to Maximizing BlueBOLT 101. If you have a BlueBOLT account and a couple of active devices and locations and you want to maximize that opportunity, configure some unique back-end features, make sure your firmware is updated, that's what this video is all about. So here we're at mybluebolt.com and we've got our full owner's manuals here. For those of you that are curious, we've got some advanced networking documents. And by the way, there's a new BlueBOLT website. It's called mybluebolt.com/partners. And if you sell any sort of control systems, AMX, Control4, Crestron, this website's being constantly updated with all kinds of new wonderful details on how the processes are all coming along. So do hit up that website. Now, back to maximizing BlueBOLT. So we're going to log in, see all the locations here, dive into my own location here in Santa Rosa, California. Now, by the way, energy management's based on location data. You're not going to have one device in one home with a different utility rate connected to an AV system and then a second device in a different place in the house on a different utility rate. So, if you want to set up the energy management settings, those are on each location's page at the top there. I'll show you again. Energy management setup, there you go. Punch in your summer or winter rates and when those change over. Now that will be reflected here in the next few minutes on the energy management tab itself in the interface. Now we click on the device itself. We've got interactive mode here coming up in the next few minutes. So it's going to say establishing contact and eventually connect to my device there in Santa Rosa, of course. Now, which page you come to when you get into the interface is totally adjustable. You have two choices. It's either energy management or the device controls. Where you actually choose is back at that location details page. I'll go back to the location details, go to location settings. Underneath the location settings, I've got default device view, outlet controls, or energy management. Let me go back a few pages here, back to my device. As I was saying, you have a device control or energy management tab. We'll dive into energy management real quick. We talked about the utility rates. We talked about the summer and winter rates, where to punch those in. If you wanted to enable various flags over here on the left hand side, this is a green check. When your voltage gets north of say 125, it turns into a yellow caution symbol, and then of course red if it's a power loss over a various extended period of time. But if you wanted to change the watt meter here and indicate something that's drawing more electricity than it should be, go down into settings and then adjust the threshold, the max power threshold and wattage. You can adjust that there. Where your budget caps out at, you can adjust that of course here. And that's based on the device itself. So those device level settings are on the device itself, not back at the location. Now, a couple additional little details here. We can go back in time, look at the day view, week view, month view. Your cost will change, of course, based upon that. And, of course, you can look at the ammeter or voltmeter. Day view, I can see if there's a blackout there, of course. And then and I'd like to point out that wattage is cumulative in terms of consumption, if you're looking at consumption there. So those numbers get pretty crazy pretty fast. Now, the third tab is Device Admin. So here's where if you're transitioning from a device for one customer, you're going to give it to a different customer, maybe for a sample or a demo unit if you are a manufacturer's rep or a distributor, or as a dealer if you're transitioning from, say, your office to your house at your own personal unit. You basically want to move a device around for whatever reason it's changing hands. You can delete the device here on the Device Admin tab page. If you can change the device's name, the name of my system here is Main Audio Video System, so you can change that to Rack 1 or Rack 2. You can update the firmware. We'll see also the local IP address for the customer's house, the internal IP address, and then if you wanted to see the end user or customer or location's external dynamic IP address, you can also see that underneath the Device Admin tab once it goes into interactive mode. So my Inside, outside, of course, that's going to change. I can also update my firmware here if my firmware is out of date. And I can also go back to the Device Admin tab and set up Auto Reboot. Now, Auto Reboot's a major feature. We talk about it a little bit in the certification section, but we'll go over it here real quick. So this first setting, how long should the device wait to reboot? That's basically the window of time the device should search for an internet connection. If the connection's lost in that 10-minute window for longer than 10 minutes, then it initiates the process. Now, the outlets that can be affected, those are all obviously selectable, and then I have inter-outlet delays there. That's pretty obvious. So these 3 outlets would turn off after that 10-minute window would expire of a lost internet connection. All 3 outlets would physically just shut off. And the first outlet to turn back on after a 1-minute delay, which is a minimum setting, is outlet or bank number 1. Of course, it's an outlet because it's a 4315. The second outlet to come back on will be number 3, and the difference in time is 4 minutes between bank or outlet 3 and bank or outlet number 1. But it's 1 minute or 5 minutes from the initial shutoff period. And of course, the last one to come on in that sequence is outlet or bank number 2. And of course, these naming conventions are shown back at the device control page if you wanted to name those and have them show up here. So that's auto reboot. Now, let's tie auto reboot in with an alert real quick before we go on to the 4th tab. Underneath the alert settings, when you opt into these alerts, you have checkboxes, of course, for all various different alerts. But here at the bottom, I want to zoom in. Connection lost is an alert for a certain increment of time that is basically telling the installer or dealer that we have not heard from this device. This customer's unit has not been talking to the internet, meaning their internet's down. So it's basically telling you maybe that auto reboot's kicked in. Let's set it at 15 minutes. And if we were to go back and look at auto reboot, set that to 15 minutes. If the installer received a connection loss alert, then they know that auto reboot is kicked in that system. So that's a very important alert of all these various email alerts. And my favorite feature here, other than the connection lost alert, is that these email alerts don't have to be set up with an SMTP outside server or anything complicated like that. It's all just plug in the address if you have a secondary recipient, or just check the box if you have it there for yourself. Lastly, scheduled commands. We've got lots of scheduled commands. I can add something in here. Reboot router, for example, there. Pick the router if it was plugged into this particular component, and then pick cycle power, turn on or turn off. Now, if you wanted to say cycle the power for a longer period of time, maybe say have the device off for 10 or 15 minutes, with the current implementation of this BlueBOLT software, you would need to set up a turn off command, turn off router here. If you wanted to have it off for longer than 15 seconds, if you wanted to have it off for say 10 or 15 minutes, turn off, and then of course go back and add a second command to turn that outlet back on again. Down the road in the future, you'll see a calendar in here maybe, and we'll give you a broader range of days to choose from. But currently, we just support days of the week and time frames, and of course, pick your times in there as it's applicable. So you can get kind of creative here. I have some weekday, weekend on and off periods. I've got a UPS plugged into a 4315, so I'm discharging my battery just to keep the batteries fresh. And in case I forget, it turns everything on at 5 p.m. So you can get really creative with these particular alerts here, just so you know. Underneath, last but not least, account settings, here's where you'll see location permissions and privileges. So I can come in here and say location permissions. I need to make sure the person that I'm assigning my location permission to already has a mybluebolt.com account. So I want to plug in, say, my good friend Paul LeMay, say confirm that email address that he has an account. The system says, yep, Paul's in our account system. And then what location of my 3 do I want to give to him? And then what level do I want to assign? If I'm only installer on a particular level there, if I'm only installer on a particular level here, then I can only assign installer level or lower, so that works out nicely. or if I wanted to give him admin, if I'm already admin, I can do that here. So check that box, click submit, and you're off to the races assigning my good friend Paul their permission as an example. So that rounds out the maximizing BlueBOLT video. If you have any more questions, please email us at customerservice@panamax.com or firmandsound.com, or training@firmandsound.com or training@panamax.com if you have any additional questions. Thanks for watching.